When life happens, plans need to change. Shaping Change, hosted by certified financial planner Ross Marino, is dedicated to helping financial advisors better serve their clients when life takes those unexpected turns.
Welcome to This Is How I Work. Today, we're joined by Robin Young, president and partner with Northstar Financial Planning. Hello, Robin.
Good morning, Ross. How are you today?
I am good. Thanks so much for being on the show. I know you're a certified financial planner. You're a certified financial transitionist. You've been doing this for quite a while, and you're part of a really great firm. You think you could start by giving us some background of what your careers look like, how you got to where you are today, and what kind of work your firm does?
Sure. So I've been in this business for over 30 years now. So I started, on the kind of the technical side of financial planning, really focused on the CFP work and taxes and estate planning, kind of pulling all of that together. And then really, I had my own sort of life happening in the background. And when I had kids, I was working in Boston and really wanted to have more family life balance, which my firm wasn't offering. So my second decade, I kind of joined a gentleman in Southern New Hampshire who had more of that lifestyle and values that I did. And so I partnered with him at that point, left my firm in Boston, and kind of we went on the life planning journey together, helping understanding better how the whys really of how people make money decisions and kind of helping them achieve financial freedom kind of was our quest during those 10 years, which was really for me the heart of financial planning. It really brought in that personal aspect that I felt like the technical side really was lacking. But then once I bought him out in 2008, I really had a lot of transition clients coming to my office, women in particular, who had lost a spouse or was going through a divorce, and they needed really a different approach than life planning. They didn't know what their new, life story was going to look like. They couldn't vision. Really, they needed help stabilizing, managing change, feeling some peace and confidence. And so, how to have those discussions, I was really feeling lacking of how to bring in the personal side. I needed more training. So that's kind of how I went down the certified financial transitionist route with Susan Bradley to gain those skills to better help my clients personally and financially. So
yeah, looking for the whys is something that as we mature as financial planners, you start getting to that point of realizing, Excel spreadsheets have their place, and so does a user interface that's pretty much just showing what's on the Excel spreadsheet, but it's just a piece of the puzzle. Sometimes maybe there's a transition in our lives, and over the course of years, we wake up and realize, man, I have got to understand what people are thinking, what they're feeling, and how they're making decisions. Maybe it's just an event, could be one client. Is there any particular circumstance where you said, I must learn to dive deeper and understand the whys, or do you think it was more of a gradual process?
Kind of happened to me personally in working with a client when I was in Boston, right before I left my firm. I was doing his financial planning, and he left a big job it was a startup that he took public, and he decided to do a sabbatical and, kind of getting to know them on a deeper level. But at that point, I was commuting back and forth and not really aligned personally. So he was aligning his life, but I wasn't personally aligned. And I remember he said, how are you doing? How's your life going? And I just remember crying all the way home. And that for me was the moment that I needed to make a change and also just change the way I do business and working with clients.
That's great. I've met quite a few certified financial transitioners, and while we go down the path of learning and we know it's so powerful, it just seems like sometimes there has to be a personal catalyst where we just wake up one day and realize, you know what, I'm not a unicorn. So I go through life, so do my clients. I really have to figure this out. I think the challenge we may have is that much of financial planning is looking, where are we today?
Mm-hmm.
Where do we want to be tomorrow? And then bridge that gap, right? Where I am and where I want to be. But when people are in a transition, and life is disrupted, all of a sudden where I want to be, it's hard to understand. They may not even know where they're at. They may struggle with that. How do you pivot your financial planning practice from maybe not goals long term to, okay, we need to just work with today, right now? What do you do with clients in those situations?
So those clients really need to feel financially secure. It's more about stability and protecting. So it's focusing on the things that are important to them. So it's kind of the process of, because what's important to me or what is black and white to me from a technical standpoint, right, is not black and white to them. So it's also aligning their priorities with what we focus on. I did think of an example of that. Like it might be completely obvious that they need to sell a second home, for instance, but a client that's not their priority in that moment. Their priority may be just figuring out their cash flow, to get educated on what they have, to be able to grieve if it's a loss of a spouse, or sort of get through the emotional turmoil that is associated with divorce. Like where they are personally, you need to figure that out so that you can help them financially and sort of walk with them instead of jumping ahead.
My next question, you actually jumped right to it, is as you were speaking, I was thinking, well, what about suddenly single? Because I know you have a practice that works with a lot of women. And
Yes.
I've worked with widows, I've worked with people who are recently divorced. I'm not going to claim to have any particular deep knowledge of that. Haven't gone through it myself. I've observed it. I've been in the program. I've worked with clients on it. I just know it's way deeper than what I really understand. And as I learn, I also realized that that whole experience is way deeper than what that person understands, because it's such a major transition. What was no longer is, what is not what's going to be. It's really hard to connect with those people. Do you find it, or to really understand when you first meet them? Do you find it a challenge to gain insight with them up front? Does it take a little bit of time? I mean, how do you really figure out what are they thinking, how are they feeling, and then decide when can I actually move in and give advice here?
So for me, I really try to show up in that just a loving, healing way and just meet them where they are. So if they need to tell me their story, and that happens quite a bit, is that the story, needs to come out again and again for them. So I just kind of, let's see, how do I do that? Exactly. I guess I just really feel like you have to be a deep listener, and you have your agenda, but checking in with them about their agenda. And there are things on their mind. Like it's not like their financial security isn't on their mind. It is, but it's just that all these other things are going on with them that sometimes they need to get off it. If you can create a safe environment for them to release all of that, there will be space to address some of the other things, but you really need to go at their pace. So sort of releasing all of the expectations of what you think the meeting should look like, and really just showing up is a big part of what we do. And then if we need to have another meeting in 2 weeks, we'll just have another meeting in 2 weeks. So yeah, I think it's letting the client pace, unless there's something, really, there's not too many things that are really critical that need to be addressed from a financial perspective for clients in that first year.
And to me, that's one of the things that I really had to learn, is that when someone comes in, it's easy, maybe not easy, but it seems clear as a financial planner, here's 18 things we could do right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how long does it take to come up with our list as someone's
Yes.
talking, right? It rattles off in your head. And we're trying not to type out notes of, okay, check on that, make sure we do that. Let's set that up for 2 weeks, because you can't do that because they're not in a position yet in order to press forward. And even after you've met with people a few times, maybe you find that sometimes people are stuck and you're thinking, we have some things that maybe they weren't urgent last month, but all of a sudden now we have to get to some of this. They've become time sensitive, but yet they're still kind of stuck. How do you deal with that?
So one of the skills that I learned in the Certified Financial Transitionist program is really purpose, method, outcome. Is sort of getting to the heart of, what it is that they need to do, the why behind that for them. And, a tax filing may be a little less, there's no purpose behind that. It's just a to do. So you may offer, find out what their fear is about that, kind of offer to do it for them, with them, go to Social Security for them, with them, kind of try to show up in a way that makes it easy for them to overcome. But if it's something critical, like they need to get a life insurance policy, they said they were going to, want to protect their family, you think it's pretty important, they don't think it's as important. It's kind of, going to the purpose of why they might, they said they wanted to protect their kids, right? Family is number one on all the values that you've been talking about. And is there, tell me more about why, you're not moving forward, sort of just naming it.
Yeah, and that's always a challenge. I was just listening to a podcast from someone who was talking about that gap between knowing and doing. And it's a huge gap because people may know and they're still not going to do. And then in transition planning, we end up finding the people where they don't know because it's so new to them. And I think as a planner, it's a challenge where when we're in those situations, sometimes we don't really know. There's the easy stuff, which are the must-dos. Those are in our head. Those come into that checklist, right? That we could write it out immediately. But how things are going to develop, we may not really know. So how do you balance when you see 3 or 4 things that we really need to get to this now, but maybe they're saying, well, there's this one thing that I really want to do first. I think it's so important. And as a financial planner, it is just not a must do. And potentially it's a shouldn't do. So how do you work with that?
So, clients, it's understanding their story about whatever that is. So really digging deep into, tell me more about why you think that's the right thing to do, more about kind of this history behind it, the story. We have all these assets, right, that we've accumulated over time. And as a planner, we have no idea what the client's story is with each of those items and how they got to them. And so whether it's, stock or, money from, a life insurance check, or how they, bought this house together and the memories, so understanding more about that will open some space to further question the client, I think, about those kinds of things. That's how I would approach it, and then, from some of the training that I've had.
And that's a little deeper than I think the average advisor would go, because we want to understand the emotions behind how they make decisions, but you really have to dive into specific investments on how do they feel, such as I have XYZ stock and
That's
I
right.
just love it, right? And then we pull up a chart on it because we're data people and we look and think, oh my gosh, how long have you owned this thing? But they love it because there's something there, right? There's some type of emotion, and taking time to learn that story. It may not come out in the first conversation, but eventually it comes out. And that's the kind of information we need in order to help people make the best decision that's right for them. So,
Yes.
so how about we wrap this up with maybe a word of advice? So let's say someone's in the middle of a transition right now. They're sitting there, they're feeling stuck. They know they need to reach out to someone. They know they need to have a conversation. They got to pick up the phone, send an email. They have to connect with someone to help them. What advice would you give them?
I'm sorry. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So, so someone's going through, so what advice would I give them to actually pick up the phone and call, or?
Yeah, how could you motivate them or encourage them to say, you know what, you got to reach out, you got to connect with somebody and get some help here?
I think that trying self-care is one of the big things that people in transition need, but don't often sort of give themselves for whatever reason. And part of self-care is finding the help, the right help to get you through the transition successfully. And it's hard to do it on your own. I work with a lot of, as I said, widows and women in transition, and having that support system helps you build confidence, helps you make the better, good decisions for yourself and your family, and gives you perspective that you might not otherwise have. So for all of those reasons, my transition clients just have really thrived. You can't, when you're in that sort of place of overwhelm and never thinking your life is going to be the same, you can't really see the light. And what I think a big part of what we do, right, Ross, is hold the light for people to know that they can recreate, they can have a fulfilling, wonderful life again with time, with the right guidance.
Great advice. Robin Young, thanks so much for being on This Is How I Work.
Okay, thank you, Ross. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Shaping Change with Ross Marino. This show is for general information purposes only and is not intended to provide recommendations or advice. Speak with a legal, tax, or financial advisor before making any decisions. Past performance references are historical and do not guarantee future results. Visit rlsummit.com to learn more.